මෙම විශේෂ සන්ලයිට් නිෂ්පාදන මිලදීගෙන ශ්‍රී ලාංකේය මනුදම්වියමන අපි සවිමත් කරමු. සන්ලයිට් කෙයා.
Tonight, don't get wet. Warnings of acid rains at the heels of Express Pearl disaster.
The burn ship emitted the toxic fumes, therefore there is a possibility of acid rains.
Hybrid, a cross between the UK variant and the Indian variant found from Vietnam. It's all good. The Health Ministry justifies paying $15 a dose for the Sinopharm vaccine. Meanwhile, those who have already had COVID might not need a second dose.
A single dose in people who've been previously infected is as good as getting 2 doses.
Growing Olympic hopes. A third Sri Lankan qualifies for Tokyo 2020. All that and much more coming up on First at 9. This Saturday, the 29th of May, 2021.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhamma. Now, the beach cleaning efforts, owing to the fire aboard the vessel MV Express Pearl, was conducted today as well. Tugboats are still cooling the vessel, which continues to emanate smoke. The situation concerning the vessel may be under control, but now there are warnings of possible acid rains in the areas surrounding the stricken ship.
The fire, which broke out aboard the cargo vessel MV Express Pearl while at anchorage off the Colombo port, is now largely under control. Although the fire was brought under control, tugs dispatched by the Navy are still engaged in cooling the vessel. The fire has resulted in the pollution of the seawater, seabed, the coastal area, as well as the air in the surrounding area.
Within these 2 days' time, we observed dead turtles and dead seabirds, and a number of dead fish species were there. And we again observed that some were half burnt, and that really indicate that whole marine biodiversity, including charismatic species, also has exposed to this chemical pollution and again thermal pollution. So that really indicates that the ship is causing damages to our coastal biodiversity, and then again to coral reefs and again to coastal invertebrates, ultimately causing some impacts on fisheries and again tourism, leading some socio-economic crisis. So therefore this ship not only polluted our waters, but again at the long term the ship has caused some socio-economic problems in this area. The burn ship emitted very toxic fumes, and that really crossed the country because of the low depression situation occurred in Bay of Bengal. At the same time, the southwest wind also pushed the fumes across the country. Therefore there is a possibility of very slight acid rains, at the same time irritations in breathing tracts due to the inhalation of these toxic gases.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa today paid a visit to the Uswatakeyawa beach and inquired into the measures taken to reduce the environment damage caused by the incident. During the visit, the Premier instructed relevant parties to take necessary steps to protect the marine environment.
මේ නැවට නඩු පවරලා ඒ නැවේ රක්ෂණ සමාගම් වලින් වන්දි ලබා ගැනීමේදී මේ එකතු වෙන භාණ්ඩ අපි පෙන්වන්නට ඕනේ. මොනවද එකතු කරගෙන අපිට සිද්ධ වෙලා තියෙන හානිය. මේ සියලු කරුණු සමග මේ සියල්ල අපිට ආරක්ෂකට යම්කිසි කාලයක් තියාගන්නට වෙනවා.
Sri Lanka Navy along with the Air Force engaged in cleaning the polluted coastline today as well, as cargo and chemicals of the vessel continue to wash up ashore. In the meantime, fishermen from the area of Uswatakeyawa had cast their nets in the deep sea for fishing a few days ago and later retreated after the government announced a suspension on fishing activities due to the risk posed by chemicals of the vessel. However, a material similar to cotton was seen caught in those fishing nets. With fishing activities coming to a standstill, State Minister of Samurdhi and Household Economy Shehan Singh today announced an allowance of 5,000 rupees for the fishermen affected by the stricken ship.
කාලගුණය කොහොමුණත් රයිනෝ නං වාලට සේෆ් තමයි මුළු ගෙදරම.
Now, yet another Member of Parliament has contracted COVID-19, with the latest being Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna parliamentarian Kapila Nuwanathukorala. The Trincomalee District parliamentarian becomes the 5th legislator to be confirmed COVID-19 positive during the 3rd wave of the pandemic in the island. Now, the so-called UK variant is the one doing the rounds in Sri Lanka at present, and reports have emerged of a hybrid between the UK variant and the Indian variant. That, however, is not from Sri Lanka, but from Vietnam.
It was yet another day of the daily COVID-19 caseload being under 3,000 yesterday. It marked a week in the island where new daily infections remained in the 2000s. From yesterday's 2,850 fresh infections, 5 were imported cases. The remainder, however, were confirmed across all 25 districts in the island. Kalutara, one of the hardest hit districts by the virus, topped the list of daily cases with 512. Colombo had been occupying the top spot for most days, and yesterday, only 281 cases of the virus were confirmed from the district. However, it is too early to say that the case numbers in Colombo is on the decline, as on the 20th too, Colombo recorded a daily caseload under 300, only to see a spike in the following days. The other district in the western province, Gampaha, recorded 443 infections yesterday. It means that a total of 1,236 new cases have been confirmed from the western province alone yesterday. Meanwhile, in Kandy, 271 COVID-19 infections were confirmed, with 191 infections being recorded from Nuwara and 177 from Kurunegala. The Ratnapura and Mathura districts confirmed 150 and 98 cases of the virus, respectively. A further 722 novel coronavirus cases were reported across 17 other districts. As for today, 2,039 new COVID-19 infections have been confirmed so far. Meanwhile, if the current strands of the virus aren't enough for the world to contend with, reports have emerged of a hybrid between the UK variant and the Indian variant. Vietnam's Ministry of Health has said that the new strand shows the characteristics from the two feared variants. The report says that the hybrid is an Indian variant with mutations that originally belonged to the UK variant and is yet to be named. The UK variant is believed to be more transmissible than ordinary strains, while the Indian variant is both more transmissible and potentially less susceptible to neutralizing antibodies in the immune system. Meanwhile, Sri Lanka's COVID-19 death toll rose by 38 yesterday to 1,363. 22 of the victims had succumbed due to COVID-19 pneumonia. The other 17 victims had suffered from underlying health conditions and had also developed COVID pneumonia. In the meantime, with the recovery of a blank new COVID-19 patients today, the island's overall recoveries rose to 148,391. As such, Sri Lanka has 29,996 active novel coronavirus cases in the island.
Now then, Sri Lanka is set to get another consignment of 1 million doses of the Sinopharm vaccine, in addition to the 1 million expected in the island on the 6th of June. This was revealed by the Chief of the National Operations Centre for the Prevention of COVID-19, Army Commander General Shavindra Silva. As a result of the additional consignment, the government has done away with the plan to reserve 375,000 doses of the Sinopharm jab, earmarked to be used as the second dose.
Sri Lanka's national vaccination program was conducted yesterday as well in pre-identified high-risk localities. As such, 1,331 persons were administered with the second dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine yesterday. 16,622 persons were also administered with the first dose of the Sinopharm vaccine. With that, the overall number of persons to have received the first dose of the China-manufactured vaccine is 580,031. Meanwhile, Chief of the National Operations Centre for the Prevention of COVID-19, Army Commander General Shavindra Silva, said today that the plans to preserve 375,000 doses of the Sinopharm vaccine as a second dose has changed.
Sinopharm එකක් මිලියනයක් ජූනි 6 වෙනිදා ලංකාවට ලැබීම නිමිතයි. තවත් මිලියන එකක් එදිනම ලැබෙන බවට මේ වන විටත් වාර්තා කරලා තිබෙනවා. ඒක හින්දා අතිගරු ජනාධිපතිතුමා ඊයේ රාත්‍රියේ අපිට දැනුම් දුන්නා. අර රඳවාගත්ත 3,75,000ත් නැවත කොළඹ දිස්ත්‍රික්කයේ ලක්ෂයක්, ගම්පහ දිස්ත්‍රික්කයට 75,000ක්, ඒ වගේම කුරුණෑගල දිස්ත්‍රික්කයට 50,000ක්, මාතර දිස්ත්‍රික්කයට 25,000ක්, ඊට අමතරව අලුතින් අද සහ හෙට දිනයන් වලින් ආරම්භ කරලා රත්නපුර සහ ජාපනයේ අර්ධද්වීපයට 50,000 බැගින් එන්නත් කරණය අපි කිරීමට බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා.
In the meantime, Director General of Health Services Dr. Asela Gunawardana justified the stance of the Health Ministry to purchase doses of the Sinopharm vaccine at $15 a dose.
බංග්ලාදේශයෙන් රටවලදී එක් මාත්‍රාවක් මුලදී ගන්නේ ඇමරිකානුවෝ 10කට වගේ මුදලක මාධ්‍ය වාර්තා පළ වෙනවා. ඒතර මේ අපිට මොකද්ද මේ සිදුවන්නේ? අපිට වැඩි මිලකට ටෙන්ඩර් වලින් ගන්නකොට මොකද්ද මේ මෙතන සිද්ධ වෙලා තිබෙන්නේ?
මිල ගණන් මං හිතන්නේ ඔබ සියලු දෙනාටම බලා ගන්න පුළුවන් යුනිසෙෆ් ආයතනයේත් ඒ වගේම ලෝක බැංකුවේත් වෙබ් අඩේටට ගියාම උන් ප්‍රකාශයට පත් කරලා තියෙනවා. එක මිලක් නෙවෙයි තියෙන්නේ මිල ඒ කියන්නේ ඩොලර් 18 ඉඳලා ඩොලර් 40 වගේ පරාසයක තියෙන්නේ. ඒවා කරුණු කාරණා ගොඩක් එක්ක වෙනසක් වෙනවා. නමුත් මෙය අපගේ රාජ්‍ය ඖෂධ නිතිකරණ සංස්ථාවත් ඒ වගේම NMR ආයතනයෙන් අවසරය ලැබුණු පසු අපගේ ටෙන්ඩර් පටිපාටි අනුගමනය කරමින් සාකච්ඡා කරලා ලබාගත් අන්තර්ජාතික වශයෙන් ලබාගත් තරඟකාරී මිලකට තමයි අප
The Chinese embassy in Sri Lanka, however, took to Twitter to say that the Bangladesh Health Minister has clarified last week that their procurement agreement, including pricing, has not yet been finalized. This was in response to a question raised on whether Sri Lanka purchases the Sinopharm vaccine at $15 or $10 a dose. However, on Thursday, Bangladesh media quoting an official said that each dose of China's Sinopharm vaccine will be priced at $10 each. In other developments, the chief of the World Health Organization is still hopeful of seeing the political will and what he termed right incentives to end the pandemic.
There has been broad consensus this week that equitable access to vaccines is essential for ending the COVID-19 pandemic. With over 3.5 million recorded deaths from COVID-19, an estimated loss of the global economy of $22 trillion and new variants compounding explosive outbreaks, this pandemic is far from over. The major gap is originator companies, but I believe that with the right political will and the right incentives, we can see an increase in collaboration and pooling that would help end this pandemic.
We would, though, like for everyone out there to separate, if they can, the politics of this issue from the science. This whole process is being poisoned by politics. And if you expect scientists to do their work, if you expect scientists to collaborate and actually get the answers that you want.
Meanwhile, people who have already been infected with COVID-19 might not require 2 doses of the vaccine.
In fact, 1 dose boosts immunity when in people who've had a previous COVID infection. So a single dose in people who've been previously infected is as good as getting 2 doses of the vaccine.
With there being a status quo on the country's travel restrictions until the 7th of next month, the public was reassured that the mobile vendor services will be made efficient and continue to be provided. Meanwhile, the police have intensified their crackdown on people who abuse travel passes, even subjecting essential services personnel and their vehicles to checks.
With the current travel restrictions to stay in effect until 4 a.m. on the 7th of June, Chief of the National Operations Centre for the Prevention of COVID-19, Army Commander General Shavindra Silva, said today that there will be no change in the system in place. He stated only pharmacies will be allowed to stay open during the prescribed lockdown time period. The Army Commander added that economic centres will also be allowed to stay open on 30th and 31st of May for traders, and mobile traders will be allowed to deliver goods to the people. Further, the District Secretary of Colombo explained as to how the mobile vendor services will operate within Colombo.
ප්‍රාදේශීය රේකම් කොට්ටාශ 13ම නියෝජනය කරමින් කොළඹ දිස්ත්‍රික්කයේ ජංගම වෙළඳුන් 8895ක් පමණ ලියාපදිංචි කරලා ඔවුන්ට අවශ්‍ය බලපත්‍ර නිකුත් කරලා තියෙනවා. තමන්ගේ ප්‍රදේශයට ජංගම වෙළෙන්දෙක් නොපිමිනෙනවා නම් පැමිණෙන ජංගම වෙළෙන්දා සෞඛ්‍ය මාර්ගෝපදේශ වලට අනුකූලව ක්‍රියාත්මක නොවෙන්නේ නම් 011236 91 39 කියන දුරකථන අංකයට කරුණාකර හැකි ඉක්මනින් දැනුම් දෙන්න.
In the meantime, many economic centres were open today for wholesale trade. Meanwhile, Minister of Trade Dr. Bandula Gunawardana said today that the people will be able to get goods delivered to their households by contacting Satusa from the 1st of June. In the meantime, the State Minister of Samurdhi and Household Economy, Shehan Semasinghe, said today the powers to decide who is entitled for 5,000 rupee allowance is vested with the Gram Nildara divisions, and that the people can get their names included in relevant registries by contacting the Gram Nildaris.
Now, the suspension on issuing vehicle revenue licenses in the Western Province has been extended until the 6th of June. The decision has been taken in consideration of the prevailing pandemic situation. Accordingly, fines for non-renewal of vehicle revenue licenses will not be charged until the 30th of June, that is. Vehicle revenue licenses, however, can be obtained online via the official website of the Office of the Provincial Commissioner of Motor Traffic in the Western Province, www.motortraffic.wp.gov.lk. Authorities had previously suspended the issuance of vehicle revenue licenses in the Western Province until the 28th of May. Now, Sri Lanka's marine environment is at the centre of a catastrophe brought on by the fire aboard the cargo vessel MV Express Pearl. The ship's cargo that fell overboard have released an unquantifiable amount of virgin plastic pellets, which are known as nurdles, leaving the country to deal with the ramifications in the long run. First at 9 explored more about the environmental threat brought on by the incident.
Sri Lanka is often regarded as a paradise by travellers. The island is blessed with coveted warm, tranquil, beautiful beaches. But over time, carelessness and indifference of the island's people have rendered some of these natural treasures undesirable. Chief among them is the notorious plastics pollution of the country's inland waterways, which drag all the harmful substances out to sea. The sea in turn returns some of it to the beaches. Currently, Sri Lanka is the 5th largest plastic polluter in the world, with its ocean invariably being the biggest casualty. The recent fire aboard the MV Express Pearl made matters worse as the cargo containers, chemicals and plastics fell overboard and into the sea, unleashing a marine disaster for Sri Lanka. These containers were filled with various products ranging from acids and chemicals to cosmetics. Oceanographers have already warned that these substances will likely have localized impacts after they quickly dissolve and dissipate in the water. But that's not all. At the heels of the immediate destruction to the ecosystem comes a long-term threat in the form of the old enemy, plastics. Innumerable plastic nurdles entered the water from the stricken vessel, and afterwards some of it were washed up ashore from Dikovita to Maoya. Though they are bigger than sand granules, cleaning it is easier said than done. Due to their small size and buoyancy, nurdles are hard to contain when washed up on beaches.
Cleaning up is tricky. There are small particles that are floating on the surface because they're quite light. They go wherever the waves and the currents take them. There are lots of people working hard on the ground and they're doing great work in removing the bulk of it. But we will see these pellets in our beaches for a longer time to come. And we'll start finding them in places that we didn't expect. They might get stuck in riverbanks or they can go into the mangroves. There is no technology that can collect the pellets and leave the sand because they're all about the same size, right? Like that's the problem. So it's really human effort.
With the support of government parties, Triforces, Disaster Management Center, I think we'll be able to complete the cleaning of the beach stretch. At least it will take 2 weeks.
If the nurdles are washed up, they could at least be removed. But what of the nurdles lying on the seabed?
Marine life will get affected because these nurdles will be mistaken for food.
With a diameter of 2 to 5 millimeters and regular shape, these plastic pellets are likely to be ingested by fish and other creatures in the ecosystem. Made of polythene or similar substance, ingesting them will only adversely affect the creatures, with its full effects on animals difficult to quantify. In any case, these nurdles will continue to be washed up on beaches as time goes on. Over time, it wouldn't be just an eyesore. A study has found that accumulated plastics in beach sediments act as an insulator, increasing daily maximum temperatures by almost 3 degrees Celsius.
Now here the issue is that there were huge concentration of these in a very small area. So that's obviously going to be problematic. And these beaches are used by different species. There's a recent study done in Australia where they've shown that when you have a layer of plastic on the beach, it increases the temperature of that beach. You'll see how that impacts turtles because turtles, their gender is determined by the temperature of the soil at which the egg is buried. So that can have an issue in terms of the gender that's born. If the temperature of the soil is really high, constantly, where we will have a skewed gender base, right, which is not positive for a population of an endangered species.
This is a new challenge for Sri Lanka, but this has been a challenge in other parts of the world. And as the Marine Environment Protection Authority, we will initially do the beach cleanups, and then we will also look into the best practices of the other parts of the world to see whether they are feasible to use in our country.
Sri Lanka is not alone in this struggle. Plastic accumulating in the world's oceans and beaches have now become a global crisis, and at current rates, plastic is expected to outweigh all the fish in the sea by 2050. As for plastic pellets specifically, 230,000 tons of it is added to the ocean each year. Once in the ocean, plastics in general break down into microplastics and end up in the very fish we consume. The chemical involved will wreak havoc within the human body. Reproductive harm, obesity, organ problem and developmental delays in children are some of them. After all, if not for the aesthetic beauty of our shoreline, for the sake of our own health and that of the future generations, we must put an end to this.
Now we have enough plastic in our ocean. I would like to request our general public not to throw anything out, to be responsible in production and also in consumption. With that, we'll be able to at least face this plastic issue up to some extent.
In other local stories, the European Commission is providing €80,000 to Sri Lanka, which amounts to around 19.5 million rupees in humanitarian funding for emergency assistance. The funding comes at the heels of the devastating floods which struck the island in mid-May. The aid will benefit 7,500 people in some of the most affected areas in the districts of Colombo, Galle and Gampaha. We will see you shortly. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is First at 9. Now, the Asian Development Bank and the government of Sri Lanka signed a $200 million loan agreement yesterday. This loan agreement, or this loan I should say, is the third of 5 tranches under the second integrated road investment program, which was approved by the ADB's board of directors in 2017. The program will deliver a total financing of $900 million to rehabilitate and improve about 3,400 kilometers of rural access roads and 340 kilometers of national roads in the eastern, northern, Uva and western provinces. It will improve the capacity of the country's road agencies on road safety, maintenance, research, road design and construction. The program is due for completion in 2027. The government has obtained first 2 tranches amounting to $300 million out of the $900 million to finance the ongoing contracts under the program. Secretary to the Treasury and the Ministry of Finance, S.R. Artigala, and ADB Country Director for Sri Lanka, Chen Chen, inked the agreement. Oil prices ended the week more than 5% higher, with global benchmark Brent crude edging up yesterday to settle at a 2-year high as strong US economic data and expectations of a rebound in global demand outweighed concerns about more supply from Iran once sanctions are lifted. Brent settled 17 cents or 0.2% higher at $69.63 a barrel, its highest close since May 2019. US West Texas Intermediate crude, meanwhile, settled down 53 cents a barrel or 0.79% at $66.32. An analyst said that Brent is making a renewed bid for the psychologically important $70 a barrel mark, boosted by good economic data and risk appetite among investors on the financial markets. Analysts expect global oil demand to rebound closer to 100 million barrels per day in the third quarter on summer travel in Europe and the United States, following widespread COVID-19 vaccination programs. Now, the government of Malaysia has announced that the country will be placed under a total lockdown as daily COVID-19 cases climb to more than 8,000. The Prime Minister's office said in a statement that in the first phase of the lockdown, effective from the 1st of June to the 14th of June, All social and economic sectors will not be allowed to operate except for essential economic activities and services. It stated that the government will ensure the country's public health system does not collapse, and various support and assistance will be given to the Health Ministry to increase hospital capacity in the whole country. The government also said it would work to increase the rate of vaccination and would announce an aid package to help the people and economic sectors affected by the lockdown. If the daily cases show a downward trend after 14 days, the country would enter a 4-week second phase of the lockdown, during which some economic activities will be allowed to operate. Malaysia has seen a surge in new COVID-19 infections in recent weeks, with a record high of 8,290 infections. Shooter Tehani EGODAWELA has become the third Sri Lankan to qualify for the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. The 35-year-old will be taking part in the 10-meter women's rifle shooting in the Games delayed by the COVID-19 outbreak. The National Olympic Committee of Sri Lanka said the Olympic Solidarity International Olympic Committee has confirmed a slot being allocated for EGODAWELA. The NOC, in consultation with President of the Shooting Federation, has confirmed the acceptance of this slot. Recently, show jumper MATHILDA KARLSSON and artistic gymnast MILKA GEHANI SILVA qualified for Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games from Sri Lanka. And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.